Good evening. Today we are starting off with the Human Resource Management chapter, that is chapter 9 of PMBOK guide. In this chapter, we are going to talk about only the human resource. Although we understand there are other kinds of resources, but this chapter only relates with the human resource. It is also important to notice here that from 6th edition, next edition of PMBOK, this knowledge area is not going to be there anymore. We are going to have the project resource management in future. Currently, the other resources are being dealt with in the time management knowledge area where we plan the resources there. Anyways, we are preparing according to the 5th edition, and there we have project human resource management. So I'll explain what all are the processes of human resource management. Right. The interesting part about human resource is, as I explained in the beginning, that human resource management is the only knowledge area which does not have a control in monitoring and control process group. Every other process out of the 10 knowledge areas, other 9 process knowledge areas do have control in monitoring and control. But human resource doesn't have a control. And I explained the reason for that as well. Do you remember what was the reason why a human resource does not have a control in monitoring and control process group? Yes, Mohsen?
Uh, I guess I forgot.
Mohsen, can you hear what I'm saying? Okay, no problem. Okay, I explained earlier that projects are concerned about two things. One is the deliverable which is to be produced that will fulfill the requirements of the project. And the second thing is all the work which goes in to produce that deliverable. You see, we had the product scope and the project scope. Product scope was about the deliverable and project scope was about all the work which requires to be done to complete the project. So we are actually watching these two things, the deliverable and the work. So all the analysis, inspection and reporting analysis will be done either for the deliverable or for the work. We are not explicitly talking about the human beings, the human resources, how well someone is performing. That is not what the project's progress is. Project progress is the team's performance and the result is the work or the deliverable. So we only check the work and the deliverable. As far as human resource is concerned, that is the business of the supervisor or the team lead who is managing those individuals, those teams, how he treats them, how he gets work out of them, how he rewards them or punishes them. That is all to be done during execution. So there are three processes in execution after we have planned the human resource management in planning. All the three jobs, remaining three jobs or processes are to be done in execution and nothing in monitoring and control. First, we acquire the project team when required. Once we have acquired the project team, then we train them, develop them, we guide them and put them on job. And after that, we keep managing their work and the project team. So all the treatment which is to be met with the team is to be done during the managed project team. If somebody is not performing well or somebody is performing very well, all the reward and everything, all the control is actually managing the project team. So as far as human resource is concerned, there is no need for a specific control. Now, how do you manage the project team when there is no performance reporting here about the team? Actually, what does the team do? Team performs and the result is the work. Work is good or bad, and due to that work, there is a deliverable. So we are already checking the deliverable and the work in monitoring and control. And every other control is looking at the work from that knowledge area perspective. If there is anything wrong, every one of the controls is analyzing the work and reporting ultimately to the monitor and control project work process. You remember from execution we were getting the work performance data. That data was analyzed by every control against the project management plan, and anything which was in variance, the trends were established, variance was noted, projections were done, and ultimately forecasting was done, and that was telling us how good or bad we are going. That creates the work performance. So work performance data is converted into work performance information about after this analysis, and that work performance information is collected together in monitor and control project work and ultimately compiled into a work performance report. Now this work performance report is a consolidated report which tells us exactly what is wrong with the work or what is right with the work. This report is shared with the managed project team process, and that process is responsible for dealing with the people. So that process would see which work was not done well or which was done very well. And accordingly, they will treat the members of the team. So all individual reporting or team reporting is actually done in execution by managed project team, and as such human resource is not a part of monitoring and control process group. Do I make myself clear? Yes.
Yes, sir. So basically,
Do you agree with the logic?
yes, sir, I totally agree. Can you hear me?
Right. So project human resource management includes all those processes that organize, manage, and lead the project team. So it is all to do with the project team. Project team is comprised of the people with assigned roles and responsibilities, and for assigning the roles and responsibilities, we develop the responsibility assignment matrix. Yes, exactly. We are not looking at individuals. You know, that is very interesting. If we start chasing the individuals, we will actually miss out the detail. We will miss out the performance. We will miss out the work. So we are more concerned about the work. No matter how, it is all the matter of teamwork. It is not how an individual is performing. If team is able to produce the work, then we are okay with it. You see, managing the team is the responsibility of the team lead or the supervisor. So if somebody is individually not performing well or whatever, he knows better and he will deal with it. But if work is not right, if the work performance is not right, then that is reported back. The work performance report goes back to manage resources, manage human resource project teams, and that person would then know that apparently the team was, looks like the team was doing well, but the performance they have produced is not good. Therefore, there must be something wrong. So he will dig down and find fault with the team and correct it. So as far as the team is concerned, we are only dealing with them in execution, and the process is manage project team. Right. The project team is comprised of people with assigned roles and responsibilities. When we plan and we assign people, we specifically assign respective roles and responsibilities to each and every person or the team. Project team members may have varied skill sets. When we plan the resources, we don't really uh, outline exactly what kind of skill each person will be having. Even if we have some idea, that is not exactly what we are going to get. When the people are hired, we may not get the exact same skill level which was expected, and therefore the performance will vary. So it all depends when the team is mobilized, what are exactly the skill sets of the people? Are they aligned with what we were expecting, or it is different? So according to that, we even have to sometimes change the plan. And then we also will find out that some of the resources which are available full-time, some are not available full-time, they are available part-time, and then resources keep coming and going from the project. As the work proceeds in the project, new resources are added, and those who have completed their job, they will be removed from the team as the project progresses. Project team members may also be referred to as the project staff. The involvement of all team members in project planning and decision making is beneficial. You see, I am not saying that all the project staff should be available during the project planning, because there are a lot many team members who are not required to be available in the beginning of the project, and their work actually starts maybe after the mid of the project. So whenever they are required, they will be put on job at that point in time. But as many resources as possible could be involved in the project planning and decision making process, more the better. Or if you can't involve all, at least you must involve the project management team in it, and that includes all the team leads and all those people who will help you plan each and everything. If they are part of the planning, they will own the solution. They will have a buy-in, and they will not have any misgivings that somebody else has planned it and it is not the right plan. Participation of team members during planning adds their expertise to the process and strengthens their commitment to the project. Once you commit that you will do it, then you will make sure that you fulfill your commitment. But if somebody asks you that you should do it, then probably you may have some misgiving. Well, he has not assigned the job right to me. I cannot do this much job. So that is exactly what is in Agile. In Agile project management, nobody assigns anything to anybody. The team members themselves pick the job and they commit to do it. And therefore, it is just a matter of servant leadership. The leader himself does not give any orders whatsoever. And the team members, they select their job, they are committed, they themselves perform well. Anyways, we are not dealing with the servant leadership question right now. We are traditional project management we are talking about, and in that we assign the roles and responsibilities according to the expertise and expertise of the people, according to the skill sets they have, and we try to involve them as much as possible in planning as if they are committed to the project. So these are the four processes in human resource management. Plan human resource management. We develop the human resource management plan, and this is the process of identifying and documenting project roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, who is answerable to whom, and creating a staffing management plan. Staffing management plan is part of the human resource management plan, which tells us what resource will be mobilized at what time. It is kind of a schedule which exactly outlines the dates and times when which resource is to be made available for what job. Then we move on to execution, because we don't want to hire all the people right in the beginning, right at the time of planning. We don't hire everybody. We hire people, we mobilize people when they are required for the job. So we acquire project team during execution as and when required, but naturally giving enough notice that each resource is prepared to work efficiently and effectively and optimally on the work assigned. Therefore, naturally, I don't want a person to be available on a job exactly on the day the job starts. If I hire him exactly on that day, then he will be totally confused what to do, where to do, with whom he will be working and how, what are the expectations with him. So we start the acquisition process giving a due margin for the team to prepare, to get acquainted with each other. So we acquire the project team a little before the actual work starts. We give them enough time for selection of the team members, putting them into a team, and then developing the team. We provide them opportunity to work together, to understand each other, to develop some group initiatives, group trainings are given, management trainings are given to them, and ultimately once the team is ready for the work and they are comfortable with each other, only then we put them on the job, and after that we start managing the project team. So develop project team is the process of improving the competencies, team member interactions, overall team environment to enhance project performance. Manage project team is the last process. As I explained you already, manage project team is the last process, and here the dealing with the team is meted with. The process of tracking team member performance, providing feedback, resolving issues, and managing changes to optimize the project performance. And this is greatly dependent upon the work performance report coming from the monitoring and control. And from execution, what are we sending? We are sending the work performance data. It is being processed into work performance information, and then it is consolidated into work performance report. This are all happening in monitoring and control. And that work performance report is coming back to manage project team. And based on that report, we are doing all this work. Process of tracking team member performance, providing feedback. This is all the job of the person who is managing the project team, and not the work of monitoring and control. Right. Managing and leading project team. Naturally, leadership is a major element in project management because managing teams is a skill. So a project manager has to be a good leader. Now, because human resource is intelligent resource and it is not a machine, so even if we provide them all the prerequisites, it is not necessary that the team is ready to work optimally. Like you see, if I have a bulldozer, if I maintain it well and I provided all the material, diesel or whatever it is required to run that machine, it will work. It just requires maintenance and just requires fuel. So it will work. But human resource, you have prepared the human resource, you have selected the human resource, you have provided them the salaries and reward and everything. Still, human resource needs to be motivated. If the human resource is not motivated, they will not be able to perform to the optimum. So this is different from all other resources, non-living resources. Human resource is a living resource, is an emotional resource, and is an intelligent resource. So this has to be dealt with intelligently. So they don't have to be used or managed. They have to be influenced, and this is the art of leadership. How can you manage, rather, how can you influence the project team to work as you plan? So project manager needs to be aware of and influence human resource factors that may impact the project. And these factors could be the team environment. What kind of team environment? If there is a lot of friction in the team, the performance of the team will be affected. So give them a suitable team environment. The geographic location, where are they located? Is it a very hot region? Is it a very cold region? Is it a desert, or is it snow-covered mountains? or whatever, these factors also impact the working of the team. Then communication. It is very important because again the human beings need to socialize, they need to interact. You can't be behaving like robots that you are just passing on the orders and the other person has to just follow it. The other people have their own feeling. They have to be, you just can't all the time be angry with everybody and keep giving orders. You have to be sometimes smiling and talking and interacting with others. So proper communication uh, is also a factor which influences the team. Internal and external politics, that is again a factor. There are, I think we all are aware that there are factors which people practice internally and externally, which they use to, let down others and win in the race by using any fair or unfair means. So we have to eliminate this politics, or if there is some kind of competition existing between the people, then competition should be made productive. I don't say that conflict should be completely eradicated. Sometimes conflicts are good. They make the people competitive, but those should be productive competitions. So we should avoid the politics and put the people into more productive environment. Then there could be cultural issues. If there is a Muslim and he wants to say prayers, you must allow him to say prayers. So whatever the cultural or religious requirements a person needs to fulfill, that must be allowed and honored and respected. Organizational uniqueness. Organization to organization, there might be certain characteristics which are inherited and which must be taken care of. And there could be many other factors. In addition to that, there are professional and ethical behavior also. You see, you can't tell a person to kill a man because that is that is even illegal. That is, there are so many things which are ethically wrong, they are professionally wrong. So your team must not be put into a situation where they have to decide between ethics and the work. So these are the four processes and I'll explain them each one by one. Plan human resource management is the process of identifying and documenting project roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, and creating a staffing management plan. That was the definition we have already discussed. The key benefit of this process is that it establishes these roles and responsibilities. Organization chart is standardized, is formulated, and staffing management plan, that is the timetable for staff acquisition and release. That is the complete schedule when what resource is to be on board. The inputs to the human resource management, develop human resource plan is naturally the project management plan is supposed to be the input. Activity resource requirements. Now the activity resource requirement deals with the resources, and this job has been done where when we were doing the time management, when we identified the activities, when we sequenced the activities, the next thing we did was we established the resource requirement. Now this resource requirement also included the human resources, and therefore that comes as an input to this process, because the number of human resources required for the project are actually to be made available by human resource manager. Then we have the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets as input and the tools we are using. Now, as I said, organization charts are very important. Organizational breakdown structures or organizational structures. So one is the organization structure of the organization, and one is going to be an organization structure within the project which starts with the project manager and lists down all the subsequent levels, who is responsible for what. So actually this is instrumental in establishing the roles and responsibilities and relationships of each and every level within the organization chart of the project. It also describes the positions, what are the duties, what are the job descriptions, and the position expectations from each one of them. So as we said, all the roles and responsibilities are outlined here. An important tool for developing this plan is the networking. You have to talk to them, you have to communicate with them, and you have to add requirements into the human resource management plan according to the needs of the people. Application of organizational theory. Organizational theory, organizational research, these are big topics, and you must understand how an organization behaves. Because you see, there is a difference between dealing with a person and a group of people. A person can be motivated individually. A group has to be, dealt with differently. You have to come up with a way, a mechanism to deal with a larger group in such a way that everybody feels satisfied. Just satisfying one person is comparatively a easier job. You see, you might have heard about the crowd mentality. What is the crowd mentality? When we are dealing, apparently harmless people, if get together, they can have the mob mentality and they can crush anything, they can kill anyone, they can, attack anyone. So this is the mob mentality which encourages them to do things which they individually are incapable of doing. So the mob mentality is something which is a negative aspect and which is an ill-disciplined grouping of people. Organizations are disciplined grouping of people. The people are giving some way of life, some customs, some methods, some cultural practices, and in an organization, an environment is created, a discipline is exercised, and we are trying to take benefit of this positive energy. And that benefit is through synergy. So whether it is a human being, a single human being, or an organization, they basically are emotional and intelligent fields. But as an organization, we have to be extra careful to take care of the groups of people as a whole. So here, organizational theory applies. We have to take care of emotions of others. If I assign a responsibility to a person and another person feels hurt by it, then we are not taking care of everyone. So we must ensure that the right person gets the right job and everybody else remains satisfied with that as well. Then we use the expert judgment and meetings, and ultimately we come up with a detailed and comprehensive human resource management plan. And as I said, human resource management plan does include the staffing management plan as well. So these are just the inputs, networking, right. If you can look at this diagram, this pretty much describes the organization structure, starting from project manager downwards. The RAM, which is the responsibility assignment matrix, against each person is defined what responsibilities this person has in the project, meaning it is related with each and every activity. In which activities are you involved? Each person would know from this responsibility assignment matrix that what is his role and responsibility in each of the activities. This can be shown in form of a responsibility chart or a matrix. And thirdly, we can even define it further as a job description or a role description, in which we write in description the specific role and the responsibilities of that task and the authorities this person has got and all that. This is a descriptive document which could be prepared as need be. For a very small job, you may not have this document, but otherwise you have that. Can you tell me what is the difference between a job description and a job specification? Yes, please. Job description and a job specification.
Sir, job description is, I guess,
Right.
what you have
Job
to do.
specification is when we are trying to hire people, I need 5 programmers. So I would say, well, they must be at least graduate in software engineering and they should have at least 3 years of experience and all that. This is the job specification, and we might have to, there are many people apply, I select 5 people out of them. Now all these 5 people are not going to be doing the same job. Actually, they will be employed on different jobs and each job may have slightly different requirement. So at that point, they are assigned this role description or job description, which exactly specifies what is the role and responsibility of each one of these software engineers. Similarly, this kind of roles and responsibilities would be required for project also. This is an example of the organizational chart or the responsibility assignment matrix. You can see the activities are written on the left column and the people name are written on top. Now this is one mechanism. This is called RASI. This responsibility assignment matrix is called RASI chart, and if you look at the bottom you will see R stands for responsible, A stands for accountable, C stands for consult, and I stand for inform. So let us assume all these 5 people, Anne, Ben, Carlos, Dina, and Ed, are the team members or stakeholders in this project. And these are the 4 jobs that have to be done. First activity is create charter, then is collect requirements, then submit change request, and develop test plan. In create charter, you see Anne has been assigned as accountable. Ben is responsible, and Carlos, Dina, and Ed will have to be informed. What do you find? The person who is accountable and a person who is responsible, who is more important out of these? What is the difference between accountable and responsible? Accountable, accountable is a person who is ultimately, he has to bear the blunt of if this job is not done right. But he has delegated the responsibility to another person who actually will be performing it. But if something goes wrong, the person who is accountable will be held accountable. So like in a project manager is responsible for the whole project, but project sponsor is accountable. Project sponsor delegates the authority of performing the project work to the project manager, who further delegates to other people, but the accountability lies with the big boss. Yes, I agree in some cases the person who is responsible he is also accountable, but I would say it in a different way. I would say that although yes, there should be a separate person accountable and there should be a separate person responsible, but the person accountable may have some responsibilities also. The person who is responsible may have some accountabilities also. For example, Anne is accountable for creating the charter, but she has given the responsibility of creating the charter to Ben. But if the charter is not rightly developed, Anne is going to answer for it. Naturally, she will make Ben answerable to herself, but Anne will be answerable to the higher management. Now, she may share some of the responsibilities. She would say, okay, Ben, I'll give you these items, these inputs I will provide you, and this is my responsibility, and rest, creating the charter is your responsibility. Ben can be accounted for those jobs which he is fully he is doing by himself. So in Create Charter, Anne is the accountable person and Ben is responsible. When I say inform means that we are sending carbon copy message to these people. Carlos, Dina and Ed, they do not have anything to say about this job, Create Charter, but they just need to be informed when the charter is developed. They have to be just informed. They must be kept abreast with it. There is no input coming from Carlos, Dina or Ed into the development of charter. They are to be informed once it is created. Let's look at the next activity, that is collect requirements. In collect requirements, Anne, who was initially the boss, is just to be kept informed. The job, Ben is actually accountable for collecting the requirements. Carlos is made responsible and he can consult with Dina and Ed. What do we mean by consult? When I say consult, that means it is a two-way traffic. In inform, there was a one-way traffic. We just have to inform them. In consult, we will ask them their suggestion, their opinion, and this is a consultation. And they will give the feedback to the person who is responsible. But because it is a consultation, Carlos will honor the consultation, but he will take the ultimate decision by himself. He may not honor what the consultation had been, but he will receive the consultation. He may or may not follow it. Like again, in submit change request again, Anne has to be kept informed. Accountability again with Ben, but the responsibility has been shared by Carlos and Dina, and Ed has to be consulted. So the responsibility has been divided into Carlos and Dina. Develop test plan. Accountability is with Anne. Responsibility is with Ed. Ben is to be consulted and Carlos and Dina are to be informed. So you generally see how we can specifically assign the responsibilities also, whereas responsibilities and roles also. Whereas a responsibility assignment matrix, it is enough to say that these are the people who will have anything to do on this activity. And anybody who has no role, we can miss out that column. But here we are going a step ahead. We are not only giving the responsibility, but we are definitely assigning the roles that person has to play. So this is one mechanism. RASI is an international way of assigning the responsibilities. But at the same time, there could be other ways also. You can create your own codes. You can say, for this job, this man is responsible for the quality of this work. So maybe you devise a code Q for that person, or whatever coding system you want to assign, you can do that. Networking is the formal and informal interaction with others in an organization, industry, or professional environment. It is a constructive way to understand political, interpersonal factors that will impact the effectiveness of various staffing management options. So human resource management benefits from successful networking by improving knowledge of and access to human resource assets such as strong competencies, specialized experience, and external partnership opportunities. You might have seen that the people who are dealing with human resource, they are very fond of making use of networking opportunities. They go to human resource seminars and events and they meet up with the people and they interact with the other players in the market. Why? Because you would then learn what kind of resource is available where and which is the best resource and which company holds the best resource, and then you will be able to talk to those resources and you may understand how they can be uh, you know hired for your organization or your project. So examples are human resource networking activities like proactive correspondence, luncheon meetings, informal conversations including meetings and events, trade conferences, symposia, Networking can be a very useful tool at the beginning of a project. It can also be an effective way to enhance project management professional development during the project and after the project ends. Expert judgment, as we already have discussed it, when developing the human resource management plan, expert judgment is used to list the preliminary requirements for the required skills. Assess the roles required for the project based on standardized role descriptions within the organization. Determine the preliminary effort level and number of resources needed to meet project objectives. So the experts we will consult with can provide us data on these items, like determining reporting relationships needed based on the organizational culture, provide guidelines on lead time required for staffing based on lessons learned and market conditions, identify risks associated with staff acquisition, retention and release plans, and identify and recommend programs for complying with applicable government and union contracts. So these are the examples of expert judgment. Then meetings, when planning human resource management of the project, project management team will hold planning meetings. These meetings leverage a combination of other tools and techniques to allow for all project management team members to reach consensus on the human resource management plan. So this is a mechanism by which we can all agree what kind of human resource management plan we are about to prepare. In roles and responsibilities for each job or each work, we must assign what is the role of this person, what is the authority he is going to enjoy, what are his responsibilities, and what is supposed to be the competency for doing this job. If you fulfill these four requirements, you will see that your people will be appropriate for that job. Organizational charts we have discussed, and staffing management plan, as I said, is a component of human resource management plan that describes when and how project team members will be acquired. What should the staffing management plan include? Staffing management plan, as I said, this will be the exact calendar of how each person will be joining the project, how long he will be staying, will he be working on part-time basis or full-time basis, when the person would be released, what are the training needs, how the training is to be provided, training need assessment is to be done, how the training is to be provided to the team members, how they are going to be recognized or rewarded, how will we judge whether they are working according to what they were told, the compliance and any safety requirements, especially like in construction, we have the safety requirements. Okay. Can you see the screen or has it stopped? For different organization structures we have studied in chapter 2,
It stopped.
we understand there are functional organizations, there are matrix organizations, there are projectized organizations. So we understand from there that in a functional organization, okay, in a functional organization, project manager has almost no authority. Then there are two other roles, the expediter and the coordinator, project expediter and the project coordinator. Just remember that these are the very low level authority roles, and I won't like to call them the project managers. Project expediter is a person who uh, is only used for assistance purposes. There is no project manager. Maybe the operational manager, the functional manager is running the project, but he has hired a person who he is just using for the daily chores of the project, like type this letter, go to this person, do this job. So this kind of job is done by the project expediter. So this is in that organization which is purely functional, and they don't have a they're not very well versed with the need of a project manager, and still somehow they're trying to manage some kind of project. So there could either be using an expediter role in which the full control is with the functional manager, or a coordinator role. Coordinator role in expediter doesn't have any responsibility. He just does what he is told to do. Coordinator is responsible for the project, but he doesn't have any power, no authority. So authority is with the functional manager. So he is also a toothless kind of a project leader. But when we talk about the weak matrix, we are probably talking about the expediter or coordinator role. In a strong matrix or a balanced matrix or a projectized matrix, the PM authority certainly keeps increasing, and the highest level of PM authority is in the projectized organizational structure. As we understand the functional organization, um, there is no control from the project side. All the control is exercised by the functional organization. But as we understand that the people in a function of an organization, like finance department of an organization, will have specialized knowledge of finance. So this is a specialized group of grouped by function. And in a functional organization, the finance people will not be talking very comfortably with the HR people, or HR people won't be talking with the IT people. Though they do not have any direct connections, they have to go through proper channels. Barriers exist on horizontal information flow. Direct communications are not possible. Functional emphasis is there. People from finance department are loyal to the finance department. IT people are loyal to the IT department. So the loyalties may impede the completion of the work. So this is more bureaucratic in nature, and this is not really very comfortable for running a project. In a matrix organization, no matter it is a weak matrix, strong matrix, or a balanced matrix, this is a multiple command structure in which more than one bosses are controlling more than one aspects. So maybe there is a project manager who is getting some project work done from a person, from a team member, and the same team member might be working otherwise for a functional manager. So this is although a difficult structure, but this is very interesting in a way that you are economizing on the existing resources. You are getting the job from the existing resources by sharing those resources with more than two managers, more than one managers. Individuals from functional areas are assigned to the project managers on temporary basis, and when the job is done, they go back to their departments. So they don't have to worry about they will lose the job or something. They will get back to their original job. Individuals return to the functional organization, and careful plans and procedures needed to minimize the effect of dual reporting. You see, the person working in a functional organization might have time card punched in the morning, and when he gets into the project, he again has to punch a time card or something like that. So there might be a chance of dual reporting in this. That is exactly why we need to have careful plans and procedures to coordinate this delicate relationship. The advantages of matrix organization are they do have visible objective. Both the bosses, more than one bosses are there. Though this is a disadvantage, but each one of those bosses have their own objectives in mind, and they get their job done from the same person. This is the efficient utilization of resources. This is economizing on resources. We are not hiring separate people for separate jobs. We are using the same existing resource for more than one jobs. There's a better coordination because all the project orders are coming from the project manager, and the functional orders are coming from the functional manager. Better information flow, and the most important thing is retention of home after the project. When the project is done, the people will turn back to their own departments. Disadvantages, naturally, if there are more than one boss, then one of the bosses will try to dominate. It is a complex structure to control. So we have to be very careful. Differing priorities of FM, project manager and functional manager may also cause sometimes hindrances, and there could be some duplication of effort in it, and conflicts are more likely to happen in a matrix structure. So again, as I said, this has to be carefully managed. In a projectized organization, this is just like functional, but here the boss is the project manager. So there is no, everything about the project is in control of the project manager. He controls the finances, he controls everything, resources, and he has got dedicated people, resources, and things available to him. So he has got line authority. And when this project will be done, naturally, there is a problem. There is uncertainty where to go on completion of the project. All the staff you have housed in your project, they all will become jobless because they do not have a functional organization to turn back to. So therefore, there is a general tendency you have got so much loyalties developed and affiliations developed within a project due to the dedicated resources that whether the project is being completed, you do not you try to retain the personnel too long as if you are doing some kind of favor to those people. Functional managers, when they are told that they have to, send people for a projectized organization, they feel threatened that these people will never come back. Then there is a reward system, extrinsic and intrinsic. When you are dealing with people, naturally you deal with these kinds of rewards. Extrinsic reward is that where the reward is externally visible. When you give a person a position, a status, a corner office, a good salary, a good working conditions, these are all extrinsic rewards. But there are some intrinsic and internal rewards, like you give respect to a person, you give responsibility to a person, you give opportunities for advancement to a person. There is a sense of achievement. These um, rewards may not be very visible, but they are very motivational. Whatever the reward is, that must be given timely and in public. You should not wait for the end of the year to give a reward to a person. He should be at least appreciated, tapped on the shoulder, as if he would know that he has done a good job. That will encourage and motivate this person to even work better. Moreover, whenever you reward a person, reward him publicly in front of everybody. Acknowledge the good deeds of that person. This will, you know, encourage others to work better, and it will give more motivation to the person who has done well. Actually, we do exactly the reverse. We do not give the rewards and even punishments in timely manner. We wait for the progress, the annual confidential report, and we try to write whatever that person has done, good or bad, in their confidential reports. If you could have advised him at the right time, he would have improved. But you have not given him a chance to improve. You have you just kept a grudge, and that is no good for motivation. Secondly, when we try to punish a person or force a person, we do try to do it publicly, and the normal reason is that others will hear and take lesson out of it. That is wrong. What is right is, why don't you reward the people publicly? If you have to, even course a person, even you have to tell a person that he has done something wrong, do it alone. Why don't we reward the people in public? Because we are not rewarding the right person. We are rewarding the blue-eyeds. We are not rewarding the person who deserved. Because if I try to reward him in public, the person who really deserves would naturally stand up and say, this was my reward, why are you giving it to him? Similarly, when you punish someone or you correct someone, do it in privacy, not in front of others. not even in front of the peers or seniors, but in public. That will keep that person, his honor protected. And he will be thankful to you that you have not abused him in front of everybody. Then we have got many management styles, but I will only talk about the two extremes. One is the autocratic style and the other is the laissez-faire style. In between we have got diplomatic style, we have got, there are a lot many other styles. But you see, I will just talk about these two. In an autocratic style of management, the, the person who is the boss, he is the dictator. He does what he feels right. He doesn't take suggestion from anyone and everybody has to obey him. Well, this method has got its own advantages. Its strength is that this is centuries old method of getting the work done. Therefore, this is a mature system. It is for well-defined projects and the quick decision making is quick in this method. Why? Because only one person has to decide. No matter how good or bad the decision is, but at least there is only one person to decide and quick decision making is possible in this way. The weakness of this method is that because you have not taken into confidence your staff members, the staff buy-in is not there. So they feel isolated. They don't go, they don't like the decision no matter how they have to follow it. They have low morale and the person who is making the decision because he knows that he can alone make all the decisions. Maybe he is a very wise person, but still because nobody can challenge him, he start making arbitrary decisions which could be extremely harmful. Conversely, in a laissez-faire style, the strength is laissez-faire is where no one person makes a decision, everybody collectively decides for the decision. The strength is that this is only for the innovative research projects and only educated, very well educated people. They can get together in teams like these and they can work in laissez-faire style. And they are all educated, they are all bubbling with ideas, they have all high morale and self-motivated staff. So you can depend upon them. So this is something constructive, this is something good. But at the same time, such a team will lack leadership because none of these highly educated people will like to confess that they are better than the other. So leader will not emerge out of them. They will always be confused about the objectives of the project and they will be unable to make decisions because not that they are fighting, but because they are honoring each other too much. And in between these two, there could be, uh, democratic method, there could be, many other methods. In democratic method, we take vote from the people and majority wins. Then yet there is yet another method in which you listen to everybody, but ultimate decision is held with the top executive. So in this case, when you listen to everybody, this is a way of getting a buy-in from the people, and the person who is deciding, he may consider the opinions coming to him, and he may use them for making the decision, but ultimately the decision is his. Then we have the Maslow's hierarchy. You might have heard about Maslow's hierarchy. This is the hierarchy of needs. In hierarchy of needs, it says that every human being has some needs. If you are hungry, you need food. If you are not provided food, but I give you a ton of gold, you can't eat it. Therefore, that is not your need. So you must be provided what you need. Similarly, there has to be a system of fulfilling needs of each other. If you will work for me, I will help you. That is a bargain. So if you will fulfill my need, I will fulfill your need. So this is a kind of relationship which is within an organization, the relationship between the organization and the employee is this. Employee is fulfilling some need of the organization, and as a result, the organization is fulfilling some need of the person. So organization must understand what are the different needs of people, at what level of hierarchy of needs these employees are. The lowest level of hierarchy is the physiological need. That is the biological maintenance. That is, if you are a human being, you need to have food, you need to have, the basic needs which without which you can't live. They have to be fulfilled. Generally speaking, in welfare states, these responsibilities of physiological need are fulfilled by the state. But anyways, if a person is hungry, he probably cannot deliver a great speech, or he cannot, be happy with a gold medal. So we must understand the need of this person. If he is hungry, we have to feed him. Once these physiological needs are fulfilled, the next level of need is the safety. This person needs safety from weather conditions, from harsh environment, from lot many other things. So as soon as he has the security and protection and stability, the next level of need is a social need. That is the need to be loved, for affection, for sense of belonging, friendship. You see, when you were hungry, you were not bothered about your friends. You were bothered about the food. Once you are no more hungry, you wanted a safe place to reside, and you are not really bothered about friends, etc. Once you have everything in place, your administrative needs are fulfilled, then you want to talk to your neighbors, talk to your colleagues and all that. So this is the social need. And after this, the higher level needs come in, like esteem, self-esteem. Now, now that you have got socially connected, you need to be respected by your subordinates. You need to maintain your prestige. You need to be recognized. You need to have a sense of competence. So this is your self-esteem. And the highest level is self-actualization. This is the need to grow and use abilities to the fullest and most creative extent. So you see, uh, different people in an organization are at these different tiers. You have to correspondingly fulfill their needs. You just can't have a reward of 100 rupees for every. The CEO also gets a 100 rupees reward, and a PN also gets a 100 rupees reward. That is no good. There will be a different reward for the CEO. Maybe CEO may like to have a better grade or better salary or something, a better position in the society. Whereas a person, the PN, may need to have better conditions to live or food or things like that. Then we have got theory X and theory Y. This theory actually talks about motivation. Theory X is about uh, the what we call the autocratic way of life, way of managing the people. The manager thinks that the people under his control are uh, they don't know anything, they are lazy, they don't want to work, and they have to be pushed and constantly looked over as if you can get the job done from them. So this is an autocratic view. That is theory X. But all the people are not like that. But in some of the cases, yes, I would agree that there are people who are of this category. But the thing is, you are imposing a autocratic kind of a system onto them. They will automatically become theory X. Theory Y says that workers are willing workers. They are eager to work. They are eager to accept the responsibility. They want to work, and they should be provided opportunity to work. Managers should only create good environment for these people and set objectives for them, and people will work by themselves. So we find these kind of people as well. But you see, what is the difference between theory X and Y? In theory X, there is no motivation. In theory Y, we are providing space to the people. We are encouraging them. We are giving them the decision power, and ultimately the same people may be more productive, more motivated to work. What we were trying to extract from McGregor's theory is the motivation. Now I'll tell you another theory, that's Herzberg's motivation theory, and this is based on the McGregor's motivation as well as on the earlier theory of the hierarchy of need. It says the people have two kinds of uh, need hierarchies. One are the hygiene needs and other are the motivators, or you can say demotivators and motivators. Hygiene needs are the lower order needs, like the physiological need, the pay, working conditions, safety, security. So these are the things which every employee uh, by default expects that this is his right. He should and he will get this thing, and uh, he doesn't have to perform any better to do that. But if you don't provide him these basic facilities, he will be demotivated. On the other hand, if you want to get extraordinary performance coming out of your people, you have to give them beyond hygiene factors. You have to provide them motivation. These are the higher level needs, like you have to give them better position, better salary, better, um, self-esteem grades and all that, and self-actualization, those kind of things. So positive motivation leads to achievement and self-actualization. Workers have a sense of personal growth and responsibility. So these are called the motivators. Just give me a minute, I'll just get back to you. Right. So next is acquire project team. Now we are in execution. In acquire project team, naturally the team has to be procured or acquired throughout the life of the project, especially during execution. But all the team members are not to be acquired in the beginning of the project or in the beginning of the execution, but they will be acquired as and when needed. So if I need a resource or a team in the 6th month of the execution, then probably I have to give a due time. Maybe the selection time takes about 2 months. So I will advertise for this acquisition 2 months before in the newspapers or whatever media I want to use. And in this period, I will get them on board. Then I'll try to develop the team. And in these 2 months, I will get them through all the process of, the level of efficiency, the optimal efficiency. They have to work on the activity they are supposed to do. I have to bring them to that level of efficiency. Once they are that much competent, at that time the 2 months have passed and the activity time has started. That is the time when I'll put them on the job and I'll start managing them. So acquire project team and develop project team have to happen before the team starts performing. Actually, a team goes through a cycle of team dynamics. Actually, this is you uh, form the team, forming, storming. Storming is when you form the team, they have some conflicts. They need to clash with each other for some time, and after some time they start understanding the nature of each other. That is the time when they are normalizing. So the first step was forming, second step was storming, third step was norming, and only after norming they can start performing. So what we said, when during the acquire project team and develop project team, we have forming, storming and norming completed. Forming, storming and norming must be completed. As if when the people are put on job, they are optimally able to perform. And in managing project team, we will get the job done from them. And when the job is done, we will adjourn them. Adjourn them, we'll break them off. We'll break the team. So there are 5 steps in the team dynamics: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So we are talking about acquiring the project team. This is the process of confirming human resource availability and obtaining the team necessary to complete the project. Key benefit is consists of outlining and guiding the team selection and responsibility. And how do we do that? Let's see. We do have the human resource management plan and enterprise environmental factors and process assets. Now, this is not very complicated. We have to naturally advertise for it. We have to, interview the people. We have to negotiate with them. We have to check them through a multi-criteria decision analysis. Maybe, I say we have got 5 marks for character, 12 marks for his education, and so on and so forth. So multiple criteria could be there for decision analysis, and we may ask the person to do something for us, like we can pre-assign a job and see how practically he performs, uh, and we can even put them in a virtual team environment and ask them to perform something. So these are different ways of, acquiring the team. And as a result of that, the project staff is assigned. And once the project staff is available, then we know when this staff will be available for the project work, and that is called the resource calendar. The resource calendar, the availability of the resource on exactly what dates, this is the resource calendar, and the project management plan is updated. You can have a look at this table, multi-criteria decision analysis. Although this is very simple, but you see, you can have these kind of factors. You can look at availability, identify whether a team member is available to work on the project. Cost is verify if the cost of adding the team member is within the prescribed budget. Verify experience, verify that the team member has a relevant experience. Ability, verify the team member has the competence, knowledge, skills, attitude, and any international factors. So these could be the multiple criteria decision analysis factors. Then next is the develop project team, is a process of improving competencies, team member interactions, and overall team environment to enhance project performance. So team has been made now. Now we are trying to improve and enhance the team. We are not actually putting them on actual job, but we may be giving them some dummy job, and we are providing them an environment to work together as if they can storm and norm. Key benefit of this process is that it results in improved teamwork, enhanced people skills and competencies, motivated employees, reduced staff turnover rates, and improved overall project performance. And what are the tools and techniques here? We need to have the staff assignment has already been done. Project plan is available. Resource calendars are available. Uh, Here the tools which will be used is the interpersonal skills of the people. The training they lack, that is provided there. Team building activities they're involved in. Ground rules are established. Co-location, we're putting them all together at one place and letting them work. And we are clearly defining the recognition and reward system. If you will perform well, how will you be rewarded? And as a result of all this exercise, we do the team performance assessments, and enterprise environmental factors are updated. Last is the manage project team. Manage project team is the process of confirming human resource availability and obtaining the team necessary to complete the project. So basically, we are putting the people on job, on actual job here, and the things we require, the human resource management plan is required, staff assignments should be there, which have already been done, the team performance assessment which we have done in the developed project team, they are available, issue log, if there is any issue, that is there, and the most important thing, work performance reports coming from monitor and control project work are here, as if we can accordingly deal with those people who have not performed well, or else who has performed extremely well. The tools we have, we observe observations and conversations. We observe and converse with the team. We do the project performance appraisals. We do the conflict management. Interpersonal skills are used here. And if there is something to be changed, the change request process is there. We can move a change request from here. And as a result, project management plan is updated, project documents are updated, enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets are updated. You might have seen that enterprise environmental factors are never updated except for in this process. As far as resolving conflicts are concerned, we have got various techniques right in front of you. Withdraw and avoid. That is retreating from an actual or potential conflict situation. You know, when two parties conflict, both have their own point of view. The party which withdraws its point, that loses. That loses. So this is a lose-win situation. Smoothing and accommodate is emphasizing areas of agreement rather than areas of difference. Smoothing and accommodation is that two parties are being very kind to each other, though they have conflicts, but they are ignoring the conflicts and emphasizing that we are those areas in which they have common interests. Although it looks like a very good solution, but it is a lose-lose solution in which both parties lose something. And the conflict remains there, and ultimately that may arise again. Compromise and reconcile, searching for the solution that bring some degree of satisfaction to all parties. Again, this is not as good. Again, there is a win-lose kind of situation, lose-win kind of situation. Force and direct is pushing one's point of view. The party which is more powerful, that forces the weaker party to accept. This is not good. This is a win-lose solution in which the more powerful party dominates. And collaborate and problem solve is that you debate. Both of parties sit in front of each other and they debate, and ultimately they reach a decision. So you can read these conflict resolution methods from elsewhere also, and you will find that the best solution is confrontation, or this last one, collaborate, problem solving. It is also called confrontation. So this brings us to the end of this chapter of human resource. Any questions? Okay then. I think we should call it a day because my next class is about to start. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.